Okay, everyone, thanks so much for coming. Don't be shy to get up. There's snacks and stuff. It's like a Farbrengen style, so if people want to get up or if they have something they want to say or ask my mom a question. So this is my mother, and also Rivka and Esther's mother, and my sister Rachel's mother, all of our mother. Thank you so much for coming. We're really excited that my mom was able to talk to us pre-Gimmel Tammuz. I know it's a busy time for everybody with school ending, camp starting, and just the summer is always a hectic time. So it's a good time to just get some inspiration moving forward into the summer. And with that, go ahead, Mom.
Thank you very much. So first of all, I want to tell you what an honor and a privilege it is for me to be here because I have three wonderful, beautiful daughters, Rivka Castle, Moshka Deitch, and Esther Abend, and also my daughter Rachel Hecht. Who doesn't live here. Okay, doesn't live in Parkland. And I especially want to thank Mushka for organizing the Gimmel Tammuz event and opening up her beautiful home. And Mushka, I want to give you a bracha that your home should always be filled with the light of Torah and Chassidus, Nachas, Gesund, and Ashirus, Begashmius, and Beruchnius. Okay, and thank you again for inviting me. And is Rebbetzin Biston here?
No,
okay.
Rebbetzin
Freund. Rebbetzin, very good. Acknowledge Rebbetzin Freund. I want to tell you the few times I've come to Parkland, I have to compliment the community. So warm, so welcoming, so hospitable. So keep it up. And I'm so glad that my family lives here in Parkland. Really, really. So there was a history teacher teaching American history to his senior class, and he poses a question. Who said this and when? Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you could do for your country. And the class is silent, and the teacher is horrified. Finally, in the front row, there's a Japanese exchange student. He raises his hand, and he says it was John Fitzgerald Kennedy at his inauguration, January 20th, 1961. And the teacher said, correct. And he begins to berate his class. How is it possible? Students in the American school system since kindergarten, and you don't know this famous president, this famous statement. How is that possible? Now the Japanese, they know how to educate their kids. They know how to impart knowledge. They know how to teach. And he's on a tirade. And a voice calls out, the hell with the Japanese. And now the teacher is really upset and he turns red. Who said that? And a voice calls out, Harry Truman, 1945. So it was during the 6-Day War, and we can very much relate to this because now, since October 7th, and since Israel's at war, and you listen to what the Rebbe said in the early years of the other wars, Yom Kippur War, 6-Day War, and it's if the Rebbe spoke yesterday. And the Rebbe was on the phone with the 6-Day War all day with Israel on the news, what's happening, and he was speaking to the chief rabbi of Israel, Rabbi Yisrael Meir Lau. And the Rebbe asked him, "Was sagen Yidden in Eretz Yisrael? What are the Jews saying in Israel? Like, what's the sentiment?" And Rabbi Lau said, "Yidden sagen, was wird sein, was wird sein?" Jews are saying, "What's going to be? What's going to be?" And the Rebbe said, "Jews don't ask what's going to be. Jews say, what can I do? What can I do?" And after the Frierdiker Rebbe passed away, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak, the Rebbe's father-in-law, the Rebbe shared a letter that he got at a Farbrengen, and the Rebbe said, "Einer hat mir geschrieben a brief." A fellow wrote me a letter. And he says, since the Frierdiker Rebbe passed away, I'm so depressed, I'm so morose, I find myself crying. And the Rebbe says at the Farbrengen, is this what the Rebbe wanted of him? That he should sit and be despondent and morose and cry? Instead of doing what he has to do, his shlichus, his avodas Hashem. And the Rebbe said even more, in the last days before Mashiach, Akvasa de Mashiach, he's taking and holding back Mashiach from coming because he's not doing what he wants. What he's meant to do. So the Rebbe was all about action, doing. It's very easy. It's 31 years since Gimmel Tammuz. You meet your friend and you go, 31 years. Could you believe it? Mashiach still hasn't come. Can you believe it? 31 years since Gimmel Tammuz. And that's so easy. Is that what the Rebbe wanted of us? The Rebbe wanted action. We have to ask ourselves, what have I not done yet? What can I do? What miftzah? Who have I not spoken to yet in my own little corner of the world to fulfill the mission that the Rebbe entrusted us to bring Mashiach? So that's how we should, and I say this to myself as well, this is the approach before Gimmel Tammuz. What can I do that I have not done yet? My father was a journalist, and he used to make a joke. He said there's 3 types of people. People that make things happen, people that watch things happen, and people that ask, what happened? What happened? So the Rebbe's approach was one of action. So tonight, I want to share with you some ideas, teachings, and directives of the Rebbe that shape our lives and inspire us and give us perspective every single day. But before that, I want to share something and tell me what you think. You notice something very interesting that, how do we call Gimmel Tammuz? Gimmel Tammuz. You're going to the oil for Gimmel Tammuz. You're putting in a pan, a note for Gimmel Tammuz. You're going to Crown Heights for Gimmel Tammuz. We don't say yard site, histalkus, Yom Hilula. We kind of avoid that term in Lubavitch lingo. Did you notice that or not? Yes. Right? And I was thinking about it on my way here. I'm like, why do we call it Gimmel Tammuz? And I thought something. Tell me what you think. Tell me if you kind of could see it this way. That the reason we call Gimmel Tammuz, I think, is because it's so uncanny that the Rebbe spoke so many times about Gimmel Tammuz. And what did the Rebbe say about Gimmel Tammuz? We know Yud Beis Tammuz is the day of redemption, the Chag HaGeula of the Frierdiker Rebbe, right? The Frierdiker Rebbe, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak, was freed from Soviet prison on Yud Beis Tammuz. And it's a Hasidic holiday. The Rebbe would farbring. And I remember as a little girl, we wore Shabbos clothes on Yud Beis Tammuz, and my brothers wore white shirts, and we still do that till today. And then the Rebbe said, but you know what Gimmel Tammuz is? The Rebbe said, Gimmel Tammuz is also a very special day. It is the day, the Rebbe said, that the Frierdiker Rebbe's sentence was actually commuted from death sentence to exile. So the Rebbe said Gimmel Tammuz is the personal Chassidish Yontif of the Chassidim, and Yud Beis Tammuz is the universal day of celebration. So what does this mean? It means that Gimmel Tammuz has the energy of Geula, of redemption. It's positive energy. So that's why I think, whether consciously or subconsciously, we can't look at Gimmel Tammuz any other way, except the day that we will see the actualization of Geula, of redemption, hopefully before Sunday. But that's why I think that's why we call Gimmel Tammuz. We can't bring ourselves to call it anything else, because that's what the Rebbe said. It's a yontif. It's a celebration, a day of celebration. So there was a couple that lived in London. They were very, very much in love. They had a great marriage, shalom bayis, everything possible. But they didn't have any children for quite a while. So the husband comes to the wife, he says, I'm going to give you a divorce because the doctors can find nothing wrong with you or me, so it must be our mazel. If you marry another man, you might have children with him. You will be the most amazing mother. And she said the same thing to him. If you marry another woman, maybe you'll have a mazel to have babies. You're going to be such an amazing father. So with tremendous pain and aggravation, they get divorced. And by some fluke, a few weeks later, she finds out that she's pregnant with her husband, with her ex-husband. What's the problem? They can't get remarried. He's a kohen. Oh. So they go to every Rav, every Bezdin, every Paisik in London and England, give a heter. And nobody could find the heter. They cannot get married. He goes to his Rosh Yeshiva. He's a Litvishim, not Chabad. And he tells his Rosh Yeshiva the story. He says, you have to go to New York to the Lubavitcher Rebbe. He said, Rebbe, New York, Hasidim, I don't believe in that. I'm not a Chassid, I don't believe in Rebbes. He said, what have you got to lose? You're in a terrible predicament. Go to the Rebbe. He flies, gets online, he gets for $1. He quickly tells the Rebbe the story. The Rebbe looks at him and says, Red midemama, go speak to your mother. He leaves. He goes back to London. He meets his Rosh Yeshiva. No, what did the Rebbe tell you? He says, to speak to my mother. He said, what did your mother say? I didn't go speak to my mother. Why? He says, first of all, my mother's in a senior home and she has dementia. And second of all, she doesn't know I'm divorced. If I tell her I'm divorced, she's going to have a heart attack. I'm going to kill her. He says, the Rebbe told you to speak to your mother and you didn't go speak to your mother? You're in a horrible situation. What have you got to lose? He goes to his mother. That day she happens to be a little lucid, and very gently he breaks the news that he got divorced, and his mother burst out crying. Du bist nicht kein Kohen. You're not a Kohen. When you were newborn, we knew your parents. They couldn't keep you. We couldn't have children, so Tata and I adopted you. But we never told you because we didn't want you to feel unloved. But your father, your birth father, was not a Kohen. So they get married, remarried, they have the baby. Now Gimmel Tammuz comes, 13 years later, the baby is now a bar mitzvah boy. So he takes his son and he brings him to the aisle. And he meets Rabbi Binyamin Klein, the secretary of the Rebbe, and he notices he's not a Lubavitcher. What are you doing here? He tells him the whole story. I came to thank the Rebbe for giving me back my wife and my son. And why do I share this story? Because how did the Rebbe know? The Rebbe a Navi, a prophet? Of course. But really, how did the Rebbe know? And I think this story will explain what a Rebbe is and why a Rebbe is so important to us. The Rebbe could be called Melech, Manig Yisrael, Nasi Hadar. But the Rebbe we call Rebbe. And even Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, the great Rebbe, we called him also Rebbe. Because what does Rebbe stand for? Rosh B'nai Yisrael, the head of the Jewish nation. What's a head? You can't live without your head. Now, you ever go to a wedding and stilettos, boom, on your toe, and you're screaming in pain? You're in agony because someone stepped on your toe? Now, theoretically, you can live without a toe. You can't live without a head. But yet, do you notice that your head is processing that terrible pain of your toe, even though it's the lower extremity, right? But what's the big deal? It's only your toe. But that's what a Rebbe is. The Rebbe is the head. Though the head is the most important, the Rebbe feels everybody, everywhere and anywhere. It doesn't matter that you're far away, you're the lowest part of the spiritual body of Klal Yisrael, but wherever you are, the head feels every part of its body. Doesn't matter if it's a hair, a toe, the Rosh, the head feels that feels that pain, feels if you're missing something. So that's what a Rebbe is. And that's how the Rebbe knows. When someone comes, the Rebbe just looks at the person and just feels that and knows what they need and so on. I just heard another beautiful story. So it was right before Pesach, and the Rebbe sent a message through one of his secretaries to bring matzah to this little village in Europe. Go find a Jew in the village, go bring matzah. So the shliach goes, and it's a teeny little hamlet, not like Sweden. And everyone says, there's no Jew here. There's never been a Jew, there never will be a Jew. Okay. He's filling up his car with gas, and he says to the gas station attendant, any Jews in town? He says, yeah, there's a baker. He's a Jew, but there's no other Jews. That's the only Jew. So he goes to the bakery. He sees the baker. He says to him, are you Jewish? He says, yeah. He says, well, the Lubavitcher Rebbe sent you matzah. And the guy bursts out crying hysterically. Seems like everybody's crying, but yeah. And he starts telling the shliach the story that after the Holocaust, he was a young man, he survived, his family was wiped out. He ended up in this little hamlet in Europe. And he assumed, like by light with Saddam, there's no Jews left. I must be one of the only Jews left. And he stayed there, all alone, no wife, no children, very lonely. And the past year and a half, the priest has been on his case. Convert to Catholicism. I'll get you a nice Catholic wife, you'll have children, you won't be lonely. Well, what kind of life do you have? You know, there are no Jews anymore in the world, he says. They're extinct, I'm telling you. In the next 5 years, you won't even see a Jew anywhere. You might as well just convert. So he goes home. He says, I don't even know if I believe in God after the Holocaust. So he looks up at the heavens. He says, listen, if there's a God, I'm giving you 30 days. 30 days is either a sign from heaven or I convert. He says today was the 30th day. Today was the 30th day. He took the matzah. He moved to Eretz Yisrael. He got married. He had children. And again, how did the Rebbe know? Because the Rebbe feels the pain of every Jew, wherever they are. The cries, the pain, the calls, the laughter of every Jew. The dreams. As soon I'll share a story about a dream. But that's what a Rebbe is. And so when you think of Gimmel Tammuz, you think about what the Rebbe means to us as our Rebbe who cares about us and looks after us and so on and so forth. I want to share another story. May I?
Yeah, please do.
I really didn't want to share the story. It's a very sad story. But before I go into the next topic, the next directive about the Rebbe, I want to share the story because I heard it and it touched me very, very deeply. There was a woman, Rachel Shapiro, Satmar, from the Satmar community in Williamsburg, married to a Vizhnitzer. At age 36, she was diagnosed with Yenamachla, which is cancer, untreatable. And her husband went to the Satmar Rebbe and asked for a bracha. What should I do? My wife it's the end of her life. The Satmar Rebbe says to him, Wenn sie zi schwer, I'll translate, don't worry. Wenn sie zi schwer, shikich in Lubavitch. When it's too difficult, I send to the Rebbe. I can't handle it myself. I have to send to the Rebbe. So the husband comes home and he tells his wife, Rachel, okay, he didn't know anything. She didn't tell him. She decides to write a letter to the Rebbe. She writes a letter. Dear Rebbe, I'm 36 years old. I have 10 children. My oldest is 14. My youngest is a son. He's 1 year old. I will not be alive in the next few months. And I want to ask the Rebbe for a bracha. Who's going to raise my children? Who's going to tuck them in at night? Who's going to say Shema Yisrael to them? When they grow out of their shichalach, when their shoes grow out, who's going to buy them the next size shoes? And how will they get married? How will they be emotionally healthy and strong and happy without a mother? Who's going to raise my kids? So I ask you, Rebbe, please give me a bracha that my 10 children should grow up to be happy, healthy, well-adjusted, loved. And she signs her name. And it's Purim many, many years later, and the Satmar fellow comes from London. He's in New York, he hears the Rebbe has a tish, a Farbrengen, Purim. He's going to come to the Lubavitcher, he's going to see the Rebbe. He didn't know that this Farbrengen, Purim, is going to end at 2 o'clock in the morning. And 2 o'clock in the morning, it ends, and he knows that, you know how it worked in 770? So when the Rebbe finished talking, they made 2 rows, and the Rebbe would walk through, like Kriyas Yamsuf. It was called a shvil. Now by Satmar, they give Shalom Aleichem to the Rebbe. They kiss the Rebbe and they give Shalom Aleichem. So he gets in line to give Shalom Aleichem. He doesn't know that in Lubavitch we don't touch the Rebbe. So he's standing there. The Rebbe passes by. He gives Shalom Aleichem. And he bends down to kiss. And suddenly the bouncers and the mascaras, boom, bam, boom. They're hitting the Funalazai. What do you think? 2:30 in the morning. To the Rebbe, he has to get to sleep. What are you doing? What's tasty? Guy back. And he's horrified. And he's like so hurt. Oh my gosh, he didn't realize you don't give Shalom Aleichem. He didn't know. And then something crazy happens. The Rebbe doesn't let go of him. And the Rebbe is carrying him along. And so, I don't know if, I grew up with the Rebbe, so the scene with the secretaries, I mean, we were looking down, we're like, what's going on there? And the Rebbe takes him to his office and says, Zetzach, and the Rebbe takes a folder out and takes out a letter and says, Lane, read. So he begins to read, and as he's reading, he's starting to get like crying hysterically. He realizes it's his mother's letter to the Rebbe. He was the youngest child in this letter. He reads the letter, and he's so emotional, crying, and he says to the Rebbe, can I have this letter, because I never really knew my mother. She passed away when I was barely a year and a half, and I don't have anything from my mother. Can I have the letter? And the Rebbe says to him, I can't give you this letter. It's something very, very dear to me. I can't give it to you. And he leaves. Now, how do I know this whole story? Because I have a baby brother called Yosef Yitzhak Jacobson. We're very close. He's a speaker. He lives in Muncie. And he's giving a farbrengen before Gimmel Tammuz. And this fellow, the youngest son, calls him up. They have some kind of acquaintance and starts telling him this whole story. And then he says to my brother, how did the Rebbe know I was Ruchel Shapiro's son? The Rebbe didn't ask me my name. And I was so silly. Why didn't I ask the Rebbe, how do you know who I am? Right? He says, I was so flustered, I forgot to ask the Rebbe how he knew who I was. So he tells my brother the story. My brother doesn't answer like how, the Rebbe's the Rebbe. But again, a woman from Satmar, you'd say, she has her own Rebbe. The Rebbe is the Rosh B'nai Yisrael. Doesn't matter who it is. A mother from Williamsburg, a husband from Vizhnitz. 25 years later, the son comes to 770. The Rebbe feels every Yid, every person. So when you connect to the Rebbe, you're connecting to someone that knows you, feels you, till this very day. You know what's crazy? I grew up with the Rebbe, and I'll soon tell you about my father, was like the Rebbe's CIA man. But we were so close to the Rebbe. The Rebbe's influence and reach is greater now than ever before. I meet people that say, I got a bracha from the Rebbe, and they never met the Rebbe, they never saw the Rebbe, they never got $1 from the Rebbe. And they're shluchim of the Rebbe. And I said, you never met the Rebbe and you're a shlich of the Rebbe? Yeah, because I felt that the Rebbe needed me. See, this is what a Rebbe is, and this is what our Rebbe is, actually. So I share this because I, for myself as well, I want to appreciate what our Rebbe is and how the Rebbe connects to us in such a beautiful way. One of the greatest things, by the way, that the Rebbe gave us is taking every challenge and turning it into an opportunity. Every challenge is an opportunity. And there's an absolutely magnificent sikh. I'm going to share one little snippet about it it changed my life, and maybe a little bit it'll also change your trajectory of how you look at life. And I'll get to the sikh in a minute, but first I have to start with a story. So, we're a family of storytellers because my father was a journalist, editor and publisher of the Allgemeine Journal. Like I said, he was the Rebbe's inside man, CIA man, and he was also the chief American correspondent for the largest Israeli daily newspaper. So my father's whole life was articles, stories, news. As a matter of fact, my father was constantly by Yechidus, which means private audiences with the Rebbe. And once he says to the Rebbe, I want the first scoop on Mashiach. When Mashiach comes, can I have the first scoop? The Rebbe said, absolutely. And then once my father was online to get $1, and the Rebbe said to him, I give you a bracha, here's another $1, that you should be able to report on the front page of the Allgemeine, my father's newspaper, Mashiach has arrived. He tells my father this bracha. So we hold those brachas very dear to us. So, anybody heard of Shirley Chisholm? Okay. Shirley Chisholm was the first black woman, to become a congresswoman in Brooklyn, New York. Now, the male white congressmen were very upset that she won the election. Why? Black, woman, they were very, very angry. How you talking? She won the election? So they decided to stiff it to her. When they gave, every congressman gets like a leadership position in one of the government agencies. They gave her the Department of Agriculture. You ever read the book A Tree Grows in Brooklyn? A tree does not grow in Brooklyn. There were no trees, there are no crops. There's no agriculture. So giving her that job is like, stick it to me, that kind of expression. So she's very upset. She gets a call from the Rebbe. Come see me, I want to speak to you, from the secretary. She says, I don't want to go. Why? When she was running for office, she asked the Rebbe to endorse her. And the Rebbe's secretary said, the Rebbe doesn't do politics. We don't endorse candidates. Okay, so she didn't want to go. But then she says, let me go see what the Rebbe has to say. So she goes into the Rebbe, and the Rebbe says, congratulations. I hear you've been appointed the head of the Department of Agriculture. She says, yeah, Rebbe, could you believe that they stuck it to me like that? So the Rebbe says to her, but you have thousands of starving, hungry people in New York that have no food. Surely you could utilize this leadership position. She's listening, okay, sounds very nice, very idealistic. She leaves. She flies to Washington, D.C. for a meeting for the congressman. She's sitting near Congressman Robert Dole of Kansas, agriculture. And he's kvetching to her, we have thousands of abundant crops and we have nothing to do with it. The farmers have nowhere to sell it. We don't know what to do with these crops. We're losing thousands of dollars. We have so much surplus, Shirley. Now she begins thinking surplus, starvation, and she establishes the food stamp program and the WIC program in New York, copied for all 50 states because of what the Rebbe told her. So this was the Rebbe, like so universally understanding of everything. You have crops, you have starvation, make a shidduch. Every challenge, there's an opportunity. And if you know Rabbi Sir Jonathan Sachs, Chief Rabbi of England, so when he first met the Rebbe, he goes into the Rebbe, and he was then in academia in Cambridge. So the Rebbe says, how many Jewish students are there in Cambridge? So the Rebbe is saying, if there's Jewish students in Cambridge, you have to do something with them, right? So he says, Rebbe, in the situation I find myself, the Rebbe says, 1 minute, find yourself? You don't find yourself. The Eibishter puts you in a situation. You don't find yourself anywhere. If you're in Cambridge, the Rebbe put you in Cambridge. So he says when the Rebbe told him, he changed the whole way he looks at things. I don't find myself in Cambridge. I was put into Cambridge. And he became a rabbi because the Rebbe told him you have to become a rabbi. And a rabbi's rabbi. And that's how Sir Jonathan Sachs became this very world-renowned rabbi. So now I want to share, if I may, the little bit of the sikha that will kind of, I think, bring this whole idea into really practical application. And I'm only giving you a little snippet. So we all know the story of Yosef with the multicolored coat, right? He's 17 years old. His brothers betray him. They want to kill him. They throw him into a pit. Then they decide they're selling him as a slave. Take a drink, sorry. So they sell him as a slave. He ends up in Potiphar's house. Mrs. Potiphar takes a liking to him, and she accuses him of trying to violate her. So he's put into an underground, hardcore, horrible prison. He translates the butler's dream, hoping that the butler will put in a good word for him and free him, an echte ketag, which means nothing doing, and he's stuck in prison. Finally, he's in his 30s, and he becomes the viceroy of Egypt. After all that. And he's 39 years old. 39 years old, let me check. Yes, 39 years old, 22 years later, his brothers are reunited with him. And what does he say to his brothers? The Rebbe says, the brothers are petrified. He's going to kill us. He's going to take revenge. He's going to imprison us. Look what we did to him. He's viceroy of Egypt. He could do anything to us. What does he say to his brothers? I forgive you. I'm not angry at you. I'm not holding a grudge. Now that took, I have to tell you, some great therapists for him to feel no anger, no grudge, harbor no resentment, and really say, I forgive you, and really mean it. But then there's even more, says the Rebbe. What does he say to them? Something mind-boggling. And here you see his betachan, his trust, his faith in God. He says to his brothers, you think you sold me into slavery? You didn't sell me into slavery. I was sent here. I wasn't sold, I was sent. You think you sold me. You didn't sell me. God sent me here. I have a shlichus, I have a mission, I have a purpose. Now think about this for a minute. That a person takes the most cruel crime, the most horrific act done to him, the most traumatic thing that he could imagine, and there's more traumatic things, and he's able to look at himself in the mirror and say, I was not sold, says the Rebbe. I was sent. It changed the whole trajectory and the whole paradigm of his existence. If he was sold, he's a victim. If he was sent, he's a victor. So what the Rebbe is trying to say over here is when something happens to somebody, hopefully nothing as bad as Joseph, but we all have trauma, challenges, moments of darkness, moments where we feel like we're in the abyss, we're overwhelmed, it's painful, traumatic. And then you have to ask yourself, am I sold or was I sent? Is there a challenge, an opportunity here? Or am I, was I sold? And then it's the end, because you're sold, you're a slave. You look at yourself and you say, well, there's no hope for me. Now, this is a lifelong journey and a lifelong effort. You can't wake up in the morning, look in the mirror and go, I wasn't sold, I was sent. It's something you have to work on yourself. But this is what the Rebbe's approach to life was. When something happens, you have to ask yourself, was I sold or was I sent? And the Rebbe said, you're sent. You're always sent. You're never sold. You are the Lord of your circumstances. No one else can say you're the slave, you were sold, you were sent. The God has a shlichus for every single person. And sometimes it's a very painful shlichus, a painful circumstance. So the Rebbe taught us that really every challenge, there's an opportunity. And I'll share with my father what happened. So it was Erev Rosh Hashanah. Am I over time?
Which Sechad that I missed that? Or did you mention?
With Yosef HaTzadik?
Yeah.
I have to look it up for you. But it's on the parsha of that, when he meets up with the brothers. It's very, very powerful. Yeah, maybe. I could look it up. Sorry. My father had a stroke, Erev Rosh Hashanah. We quickly told the Rebbe, because I mentioned to the Rebbe, my father was very close to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe, that Rosh Hashanah, unheard of, after the Suda had a Farbrengen, and calls my brother Simon Jacobson, my oldest brother, to say L'chaim. And Rabbi Groner, Label Groner, one of the Rebbe's secretary, tells my family after the Farbrengen, you know that the Rebbe Farbrenged for your father. The Rebbe never Farbrengs Rosh Hashanah. That doesn't happen. And my father's merit. Anyway, my father's still stuck in the hospital. Comes Yom Kippur, if you recall, Erev Yom Kippur, people lined up for hours to get a piece of honey cake from the Rebbe. The Rebbe tells his secretary, go call Simon Jacobson quickly. So my brother comes, the Rebbe puts him to the front of the line. He says, one piece for you, one piece for your father. Zog de Tata, tell your father that when he finishes his shlichus in the hospital, he'll get out. So my brother runs to I never told you the story about Zaidi? Okay, my brother runs to the hospital. It's also a little humorous. And my brother goes in, tells my father that Rebbe said, okay. So my mother, the quintessential miftzah lady. My mother never travels anywhere without her bag of candlesticks, everything but tefillin. Starts running around the hospital because the Rebbe said, so my father calls her back and says, I think the Rebbe said, I have a shlichus here, not you. So anyway, Motzei Yom Kippur, my father's still not out of the hospital. The Rebbe sends Rabbi Charikov, his personal secretary. The Rebbe had a personal secretary, Rabbi Charikov. Brilliant fellow. I could tell you. Your grandfather? Oh my gosh, very close to my father. My father and Rabbi Charikov were like, even though big age difference, but they were very, very close. Because my father was very close to the Rebbe, so. And he says, the Rebbe says to Rabbi Charikov, go visit Gershon Ber. My father's first name was Gershon Ber. So he goes to the hospital. He says, the Rebbe wants to know, when are you finishing your shlichus already? What are you still doing here? But also on behalf of the Rebbe, he was Mavaka Chaylim, he visited my father. So again, you're in the hospital, you were sent there. You have something you have to do there. I never knew what my father had to do there, but obviously there was something he had to do there. But again, who has that approach? Go say Tillim, speak to the doctor. But Rebbe said, you have a shlichus there. Otherwise, why are you there? So that whole thing opened up a whole world to us. That everything in life, there's some opportunity in these challenges, in these dark moments. Don't ask me what they are sometimes. It's very challenging. So the hour is getting late, right, Mushka? So I'm going to, so I want to end off with something for another few minutes, if I may, right? Is that okay? Okay. So in 1989, 5 years before Gimmel Tammuz, the Rebbe had a farbrengen and said something very whimsical. Like no one paid attention. Everyone thought, oh, how cute. My two brothers were chayzrim. Chayzrim means that on Shabbos and Yontif, you couldn't tape the Rebbe's speeches, so they had people with photographic memories that would memorize. And right after Shabbos and Yontif, the fellows, like my two brothers, would sit down and quickly transcribe it so they shouldn't forget it. So my brother mentioned this to me, my youngest brother, Yosef Yitzhak. Yeah. Oh, sorry, I call him Yosef Yitzhak. Right. And the reason I say my baby brother is for a very funny reason. Whenever I go somewhere, like I was just in Brazil with him, and he says, oh, I'm her baby brother. And I'm like, baby? Okay. Not a baby, but okay. So the Rebbe said something very whimsical. The Rebbe said a story that a tzaddik went up to the heavenly courts, his time is up, and they said to him, okay, go into Gan Eden. And he said, absolutely not. Not until Mashiach comes. So the heavenly courts enticed him with some nice gifts, so he couldn't resist, so he jumped to Gan Eden. This is the Rebbe saying it if I bring in this tidbit. And everyone is speculating, who is the Rebbe talking about? What tzaddik went up to Gan Eden and didn't want to go in? And we all said, oh, Rebbe Levi Yitzchak Berditcher, the famous advocate for Klal Yisrael. Remember all the stories, whatever, very famous Rebbe that always advocated for Klal Yisrael. And they said when he heard the melodies of Gan Eden, he couldn't resist, so he jumped in Gan Eden. This is what everyone was speculating. The Rebbe didn't say who it was. Now I'm continuing what the Rebbe said. The Rebbe said, but there's a way to get around this for the tzaddik. How does the tzaddik get around this? He does something called neder al das rabbin, which means you make a public vow. Now, if I come to you and I say, Rivka, I'm going to be a vegan this year, and then I change my mind, I can annul my vow very easily because I said it to one person. I'm going to be a vegan. Now I don't want to be a vegan anymore. But the Rebbe said, let's say you make a vow in an arena in front of thousands of people. You can't just annul your vow. Thousands of people heard it, told it to other people. It's not such a simple procedure. So the Rebbe said, if a tzaddik makes a vow in front of many people, then he can't go into Gan Eden because he made a vow. You can't just annul your vow when you get up there. And then the Rebbe finished the farbrengen. Okay, no one paid much attention. Interesting tidbit. Now listen what happens. Fast forward, it's after Gimmel Tammuz, it's after October 7th. My brother, Yosef Yitzhak, Rabbi YY, was asked to speak to the survivors of the Nova Festival. Now, for Shabbos, on Shabbos. Now, speaking to the survivors of Nova Festival is all young people who survived. And I don't know if you realize that 90% of the Nova attendees were former Charedim, former Frum kids who went to this festival. They used to be Frum. So there's something called Kesher Yehudi who organized this with my brother to speak to them. There's more to be said, but another time, because it's a very long story. I'm only going to share what's very relevant. So my brother speaks. We're very close. So he's WhatsApping me on his way home from Israel. And he tells me, you will not believe what just happened to me on the plane. I said, first of all, how did your lecture go? He said it was amazing. It's a very tough job, but they got the right guy for it, the right speaker. So on his way home, he's sitting near a Svardish Moroccan Jew. His name is Rabbi Moshe Biskalo. And Rabbi Moshe Biskalo doesn't know my brother from beans. He just knows, Chabadnik, very nice. And he starts chatting my brother up. He says, I'm close to Chabad. My bar mitzvah was by the Rebbe. My father, David Biskalo, translated the Tanya into Spanish. We're very close to we know the Rebbe. And he says, I want to tell you a crazy story, he tells my brother. I was having a serious problem, so I went to my Chacham, my Mekubal. Now, the Svardim have amulets, kameas. They go to their Rebbes, their Mekubalim, they call them, and they help them. And this Mekubal is called Moshe Kitayv. He's called the Tzaddik of the Mezuzahs. He's a Svardik Mekubal, a Kabbalist. But this is all Torah. This is not like witchcraft. This is all Torah stuff. So he went to him. He told him his problem. Says, Reb, Mekubal, whatever, Chacham, I need help. He thinks, he says, I can't help you. Go to New York, to the Oyel, to the Rebbe of Lubavitch's Oyel. There, all your problems will be solved. So Moshe Biskala says, I came to you. You're my Mekubal. Why are you sending me to New York? He says, I'll tell you why I'm sending you to New York. A few nights ago, I had a dream that there was a tzaddik standing outside of Gan Eden, and they were trying to get him to go in, and he said, I cannot go in till Mashiach comes. And he says, and in my dream, I look to see who's this tzaddik, and I see the Lubavitcher Rebbe. He tells my brother, and my brother is like jumping out of his seat, because my brother, remember, was the Chayzer who remembered this. And he says, so the Mekubal told me, Moshe Biskal tells my brother, the gates of heaven are all open there, because they're waiting for the Rebbe to go in. And the Rebbe's there. So why would you go anywhere else to get your bracha? That's the story he tells my brother. Okay, so I have to tell you one thing, that when the Rebbe Rashab, the fifth Lubavitcher Rebbe, passed away, his son, the Frierdiker Rebbe, said something, and the Rebbe, when the Frierdiker Rebbe passed away, said the same thing. What did he say? He said a pasuk called Loi Azayv Tzayin Mar Isai. A shepherd never leaves his flock unattended. A shepherd never leaves his flock unattended. So I have to tell you one thing, that as we go into Gimmel Tammuz, that first of all, we know that the gates of heaven are open. The Rebbe is here with us. The Rebbe never left us. It's quite obvious. And when I was a little girl growing up by the Rebbe, we always said, we're waiting for Mashiach. We even have a song, we want Mashiach now, we don't want to wait. But now, I have to tell you, Mashiach is waiting for us. The Rebbe is literally waiting for us. So now we know that the gates of heaven are open. The Rebbe is waiting there. The Rebbe said to us very clearly, I've done all that I can, and now it's up to you. In other words, the Rebbe entrusted us to finish his mission, to finish what he started, which is to bring Mashiach, to bring the Geula. That's our job. And you might say to yourself, well, I don't know, who am I, a little lady living in Parkland, or me in Connecticut? But I'll tell you, after Gimmel Tammuz, everybody in my community, I live in Connecticut, asked me, what does it say in the Rebbe's will? Who's the successor? Who's taking over? So I explained to them in Lubavitch, it doesn't matter if you have a nephew, a son, an uncle. Either you're born a Rebbe or you're not born a Rebbe. There's no successor because no one else was born a Rebbe, right? But now I changed my story. People ask me now, who's the Rebbe's successor? How could it be 31 years, no successor? So wait a minute, hold on. There is a successor. They go, really? Who, Freda? I'm like, you. You? Me? I'm like, yeah, and me, and you, and you. Because the Rebbe said, I'm leaving it up to you. So each one of us is now the Rebbe's successor. And the Rebbe said clearly, a chassid is a shtickle Rebbe. Every chassid is a Rebbe. And how do we know it? Don't take my word for it. That Tzemach Tzedek had 7 sons. Only his youngest son became Rebbe, the Rebbe Marash, Reb Shmuel. And when the Rebbe wrote letters to his sons, he wrote, L'kvoid Kedushas Admor. He called his sons Rebbe. And they said, Rebbe, why are you calling your sons Rebbe? You're the Rebbe. He says, every chassid is a Rebbe. So what do we have to say here? That it's up to us. One little step in the right direction can change that trajectory. The gates of heaven are open. The Rebbe is waiting for us. We have open arena to ask for whatever we want and do whatever we can. So I want to end off with a bracha that we should see Taka before Gimmel Tammuz. Why do we have to wait till Sunday? The Geula Amitis V'Ashlemus, Al Yidei Mashiach Tzidkenu, L'Matim Asar Tvachim, the redemption, revealed way, and let it be now. And thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Guys, just a quick note, everyone should have received a copy